If you are someone who watched my immersive sim recommendation video from a few years ago, maybe you'll remember the demo I mentioned for an upcoming release, Peripeteia. Today marks the release of its early access, and while I was planning on buying it day one myself, since it has sat at the top of my wishlist for the past 4 years, the devs were nice enough to send me an early access code for the game. So here is a first impressions, thoughts on recommendation video on the Peripeteia early access. The reason it's a first impressions and not a full review of it is that beyond wanting to wait for the early access to be complete so I can assess the full final product of 1.0, I wanted to get it out on this release date, and I vastly underestimated the size of these levels. The first demo I played for the video back in 2021, while large, was still something you could tackle with a reasonable amount of time and feel like you saw everything, or at the very least a good amount. The first level of the early access is so astronomically large and filled with so much shit, it took me 5 hours until I was satisfied to move on to mission 2. It's like, what if Liberty Island, the park, and the hotel area of the first Deus Ex were all one level? It kept blowing me away how much level there was in just the opening. I kept going, how do you even design this and have it all connected in ways that make sense? It's no wonder this release is years later. It must have taken so much time to plan out. I even went and asked the developers how they went about doing this, and they told me that they actually first designed the levels in Hammer, the tool used for making Half-Life 2 levels, then transfer it over to Unity. You can really see some of the Half-Life 2 isms in level 3. The locations were described as a string of consciousness Hammer editing based on real rundown and abandoned places they did urban exploring in. That means you too, dear viewer, can go out and explore the locations of Peripeteia in real life, to some extent, since I imagine they were all stitched together kind of like how locations look in your dreams. While the core game has mostly stayed the same, there has been a few changes that it is worth doing an updated overview of these systems. You have a multi-limb health system like Fallout does, you have your augmentations, some which come by default like night vision, increased mobility, and a mapping drone, and then there are those which can be implanted and take up some of your inventory space. These are invisibility, silent footsteps, puppeteer, and probably many more which I haven't run into yet. The last one I was never able to get working, but I was told ahead of time that my build was going to be a bit buggier, like grabbing objects usually caused them to shoot into the air, launch Skyrim style, and going downstairs too fast, usually with the augmented mobility option, caused me to take damage to my legs, which did get annoying. But there is also a chance that I simply wasn't using Puppeteer correctly. Upon further testing before putting this video out, it turns out you simply have to be right on top of an enemy in order to get it to work. The game just does not explain this at all. So every time I tried to use it previously, it was simply not in range. Maybe if there was a little thing that denoted that you weren't in range, this confusion could have been avoided. The game has the right amount of bugginess and jank for my liking, something that reminds me there is someone on the other end of this creating a piece of art. Those rough edges and ambitious but not always functional ideas come from a place of passion. It's like watching a really good student film. It's the magic that can only be found in indie games in the current state of the industry. That's not to say that there aren't still a ton of great big budget games coming out, but indies like this keep that do-it-yourself ingenuity I love. It results in something that is much more interesting to interact with and analyze than an extremely sleek but ultimately impersonal product-feeling game. This is someone's unfiltered vision, so of course you get an extremely striking-looking HUD. You get characters that look weird and out of place, and a world that is cold and unloving. Skyboxes that you can't help but stare at even if you realize it's just a texture. It's a great vibe, and I don't care if some smarmy jackass thinks I am being overly flowery about this shit. It's cool and I really resonate with it. The game has an inventory system like Stalker, so looting enemies and locations in conjunction with inventory management plays a huge part of the moment-to-moment gameplay of Peripeteia. You can pick up guns and manually unload magazines and clips from them to keep for yourself. You can even take the bullets out of said clips so they don't start to pollute inventory space, and keep them in a singular bullet box akin to the ones in Resident Evil. The scavenging for weapons during firefight scrambles is so incredible. Desperately trying to find a gun off of one of the dead bodies that is still loaded so you can pop out the mag and save yourself before getting getting blown apart is something that I can't get anywhere else. At least not with this level of intensity. Climbing and clearing out the radio tower was such an awesome and rewarding task. It's a very weird and surreal experience to get to play an immersive sim for the first time, and because it is not out yet, I can't look anything up about the game. I am having a truly blind first playthrough without the possibility of influence or guides of anything else. All I can do is explore and bash my head against the wall when I get stuck. This must be what it's like to play a FromSoft game early before launch. I'm not even confident I've seen all there is to do in the first few levels, given the sheer size of them. I found the heavy MG at the top of one of the buildings, I found some of the shortcuts and how the level keeps looping back on itself in Mission 1. In Mission 2, I still had vague memories from 4 years ago, but I kept finding new stuff that wasn't there originally, and had since been added on. And in all of the new levels, I kept finding myself jumping off of high rises just to see how far down they go. The verticality is astonishing, and with the parkour system of this game, it is dying for you to explore every nook and cranny. That point I made in my original video about being unable to tell what is actual level and what is just set dressing and level boundaries still exists in this build. It's both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it does initially make it hard to find out where to go and what you can actually do, but on the other, it creates such an intimidating yet inviting feeling to endlessly explore into the foggy, rainy darkness. I mentioned a minute or two ago how I really love how cold this game's world is. It's just really sad the more you explore and the more you interact with its citizens. You find a woman who shot herself after running out of money, an abandoned child taking care of their father who was bound to an iron lung. You can actually pull the plug on him, but I wasn't able to trigger anything, so as a result I just reloaded the save before I pulled the plug and left him alive. The one that got me the most was in the first level when finally getting the bulb for my mission. I found this busted up android at the base of the machine, barely alive, clearly attacked by the sewer dwellers or the second unionists. I could have easily put her out of her misery so she'd die still seeing the lights of the planetarium she loved so much, but I chose to take her back to the original quest giver, who was her master that ran the planetarium back in the old world. Like any good immersive sim worth its salt, there was an alternate mission ending and reward for doing this. In a lesser game, there would have not been a unique interaction for trekking her body all the way back to him, but in Peripeteia, it's the exact opposite, and as a result, she was fixed up. In good old Peripeteia fashion, it isn't exactly clear if this was the right decision, if the android is happy, but I want to imagine that they are. That there is still a little happiness that can be wrung out of this dying world. I think I'll leave it at that. Hopefully, if you hadn't heard of this game before, or were on the fence about picking up the early access, this video and possibly the previous immersive sim one convinced you to buy it. I don't know how much it's going to be going for, but in its current state, I think it's well worth at the very least $20. There is a ton of meat in the currently available levels that you could easily keep yourself busy if you want to fully explore them. All the levels I've played so far seem to have at least a minimum of 3, if not more, alternate ways to go about your objectives. I don't know if the fully completed 1.0 release will be this year, but given the amount of content in these levels, probably not, no matter if they were just going to be adding 2 or 10 more levels. This stuff simply takes a lot of time. But if by some miracle Peripeteia does come out, it easily could be one of the best releases of 2025. I'd consider its early access already making that qualification, and I think that's saying something in a year like 2025, which is incredibly stacked, especially for my personal tastes. If you've made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you for watching as always. If you really liked the video, then please leave a like, comment, and share the video around. If you want to see more videos like this and support the channel, then maybe consider becoming a patron on Patreon, or now the newly added YouTube membership. All patrons and YouTube members get access to videos a day early, along with a $3 tier to allow you to vote on upcoming multi-game reviews, a $7 tier to view rough cuts of upcoming videos, and now I'm going to shout out all of my $5 and up patrons and members who really help support the channel. Vic Sauce, Valetti, Bully, Densha, Turbo Chicken, Scary Dinosaur, Burley, Chikun Highwind, Dev Welkin, Fish Kami, Jordan Bennett, Kevin Velasquez, Kohai Carmen, Lotto, Maxi89C, Medi Not the Bad Guy, MGS Duh, Quartz, Samuel Egan, Sayin Heggy, Slemph Tingle, Vaso, Metal Cactus, Friday Night Fragging, Alec Joseph, Ben Johnson, Ben Olsberg, Buckets, Chichometrius, Cursed Void, Ek Frazo, Filthy Finger 69, Hardleg Joe, Jacob Hamilton, Leon, Nicholas Pedinato, Pittori Bursky, Sean the Berserker Fighter, Shisaji, Tabriz Sadiq, and Neutral Guy. Thanks so much, everyone. As for what's coming out next, I have a lot of videos still in the work. Probably the next thing to come out is going to be a review on Beyond Citadel, so hopefully you look forward to that and enjoy it. So as always, thank you for watching, and see you next time.